Welcome to our Connect session about best practices for creating a payment accuracy program that everyone will love. By way of introduction, I'm Rebecca Barnes. I am one of the managers for our implementation team, and I support the payment accuracy platform. And I have been with Availity for almost 4 years, historically working for practice management system vendors, and I am a certified coder, but I've been with Availity now for a little while and have really enjoyed this journey.
And I am Christina Love. I'm the product director for our payment accuracy portfolio. And so I'm here to help solve all of the problems related to getting paid incorrectly.
All right, our objectives for this session, we're going to talk about explaining the difference between payment accuracy and payment integrity. We're going to talk about shifting left in the claim lifecycle and why that is optimal. We're also going to illustrate how you can identify opportunities to implement payment accuracy programs within your organization, whether you're a health plan or provider organization. And we're also going to highlight best practices for any organization to build out successful payment accuracy programs. So let's get started.
So payment accuracy, if we have one key takeaway besides the objectives that Rebecca just talked through, it's an understanding of what is payment accuracy and why is the concept of shifting left optimal. So payment accuracy is a newer term within the industry, and Availity is heavily invested to help solving this problem industry-wide and really trying to shift the market's mindset into being much more proactive and preventative than in cleanup. So to give context, payment accuracy, it represents the accuracy throughout an entire revenue and claim lifecycle. So in other words, everyone is winning very early on in the process and having much more of an accurate claim lifecycle. The difference being that with payment integrity is that this is typically a term that's used to refer to a health plan's focus in that post-adjudication or prepayment processes, or even after that claim has been paid. So a lot of times in your personal life, you can equate this to reconciling your credit card statement at the end of the month. And if you find a discrepancy, then having to reach out to your credit card company to open a dispute and hopefully recoup that money. So with payment integrity, there are still limitations with our post-pay claims editing today. And several of those do exist and cause pain for health plans, providers, and even patients. So multiple vendors are often required, and they provide a much more niche service or a solution set. So this can in turn be costly to support multiple vendors. Some of those examples may be a billing company for provider organizations or having independent chart audits by health plans. Then we look for internal inefficiencies that exist. One major problem is that one team alone isn't responsible for payment integrity activities. And so all of these teams must have really good collaboration, but that may not be the reality and often isn't the reality of what it looks like. And so a lot of times working together, it looks like a game of ping pong between these different teams and individuals. And then if you look at all the activities that have to take place, these take time. So that introduces industry abrasion because that results in delays or even say recoupments that can be abrasive across the industry. So think a provider is receiving a delayed payment or their payment is then being recouped by a health plan. That say the health plan is the one that is even initiating taking that money back. And then even worse, a patient may receive an unexpected balance bill and they may not have the education or the whereabouts to know how to challenge it, or they may not have even budgeted in order to pay for that bill. So that is then abrasive to the patient themselves. And then lastly, there is a lack of transparency across the entire continuum here to understand like what does great look like and how do we solve this industry problem to have accurate claim processing. So All four of these limitations, they do result in a lot of administrative waste that can be prevented. So that leads us to payment accuracy and how that payment accuracy is delivering the ideal claim lifecycle. So it starts with a complete and accurate charge capture, and then think this claim is going to go on a road trip. So it's following the GPS, but it might take one wrong turn on the freeway because a code was mapped incorrectly. But with a quick correction, it's back on course and on its way to collect that $200 for passing go. So payment accuracy is incorporating fast, real-time, and transparent payments. And then payment integrity becomes more of the exception handling and proactive compliance monitoring. So it becomes beneficial to then reinforce payment accuracy and help us all maintain responsible practices or, say, stewardship. So I know many of us do wish that we were already in this ideal state, but here we are already making headway to that ideal claim lifecycle.
So talking about a program and how you build one that everyone will love, overcoming those barriers that Christina mentioned, this is going to feel very rewarding for you and your organization. So first of all, when we're talking about payment accuracy and a program to build out, really this is about business transformation, and there are some key elements that are necessary to make this successful. First of all, payment accuracy becomes about how you operate to reduce administrative waste across the claims lifecycle. It starts with a culture of change. And so this is going to be a shift in mindset for some to align your key stakeholders within your organizations. Christina touched on that a little bit with making sure you have all of that in place. Additionally, you want to improve collaboration between payers and providers to reduce the friction that's in the life cycle, as well as enhancing that member experience through the claims transparency. You also want this to be a sustainable process. And when you start to reduce inefficiencies, it's going to build upon itself, and it's going to be sustainable and scalable as your organization does grow. And we also talk a little bit about technology and how it is the enablement for the channel for allowing this to happen. This helps support the transparency, the automation, the efficiency, and really is going to give you better results in the end. So therefore, you want to make sure you're tracking to that. One of the things we'll touch on in a moment is around key performance indicators that you can measure and basically grade yourself against to see if this is working and it's being as successful as you hoped. So to get into more detail, when you're building out this culture of change, you want to start out with people. The first one is probably one that I say is most critical, is having an executive sponsor. Having an executive sponsor is going to be essential to drive the transformation within your organization. This is also going to enable accountability throughout and across teams and support aligning people to the processes. So a theme here is going to be some education. Everyone needs to be educated about the value in the program and how it's supported, alongside the best practices to reduce common mistakes. Additionally, what tools are available to make life easier and how to use them effectively. So just by way of aligning those team members after your sponsor is in place, you're going to educate within your organization, and this is going to build out this bench strength that you need. You'll talk in that education about why you're doing what you're doing, or the program's objectives, the best practices, and that's going to include any possible change that may be made in internal processes. And then lastly, any of those tools and procedures that you want to ensure the teams have. So one customer example we have on the right is you want to make sure you have the right people in the right roles focusing on their strengths. This is going to help improve efficiency and accountability by limiting the number of people involved in those decision-making processes. That being said, you're also going to have those representatives across the key stakeholder organizations within your organization to have everyone represented, whether that's compliance, legal, operations, et cetera. You'll get the right people in place for that.
And then once you get the right people, in the right roles and focused on their strengths, Then it's looking at creating those sustainable processes. So standardization and optimization are going to be key here. So you'll want to spend a lot of time analyzing what your current pain points are and prioritize where to start first. So if that's within, say, your call center, a typical type of denial that you're getting calls for that could easily be rectified, look to start there first. Or if there's just inefficiencies with the number of people involved to complete a specific task, can that then be automated? Also know that not every single process can be automated, but you can still streamline in order to reduce some of those inefficiencies. Also, you'll want to establish processes for oversight and continuous improvement, especially around your compliance practices as well. So with the key performance indicators, this is really going to be how you measure success to know, is this program effective or not? So it is critical that you set up regular review cycles, whether that's monthly or quarterly or twice a year, and that you'll want to then keep the executive sponsor informed. By keeping them informed regularly as well, they can help you understand, and give you guidance on where you may have opportunities or to get you back on track. So we look at results across all of our health plans that are supporting payment accuracy activities and programs today. And we've seen an average repair rate of 54% across all of those health plans. And some of those that have created really great processes around provider engagement and provider communication even see above that as well, which is awesome to see adoption in the marketplace and changing the provider behavior for the good of patients, providers, and our health plans. Also, we've seen a reduction in denial rates by 30% on average across these same health plans as well. So that means with the behavior changing and the repair rate and communication and efficient processes, we're then in return reducing that administrative waste for the payment integrity activities that exist today still out there. So technology can be powerful to enable both your people and your processes, but it also can be transformative outside of your organization. So with that, if you implement pre-pay editing, this will give much more proactive feedback to providers. And if you're a health plan and as well as providers can implement editing as well for additional claim feedback at the time of claim submission. But the key here is that this claim edits need to be clear and they need to be actionable. So say the health plan is saying, I need attachments alongside this claim in order to pay it successfully. Be very clear in that message and say what type of or section of the attachment or the medical record do you need in order to support the information that's on that claim. And that will be a much more efficient process, and it'll also reduce some phone calls there. But then think about our analogy of the road trip. So when we took that wrong turn, well, claim editing is the one that's going to make that correction very quick. So it's like you're just getting right back on the freeway instead of taking side streets to find the next exit to get back on the freeway. And then it's important to use all of the channels effectively to send the feedback from the claim edits. So whether that be EDI, or your provider portals, even through API integrations with any HIT vendors as well, the providers can then receive these notifications within their workflow and action right away. So also, once new edits are implemented, communication and continuous education are going to be key here. So thinking back to the people involved and the processes that you've created, you can communicate early and often and using the same technology tools and channels in order to say that new edits are in place that would need to help drive adoption in the marketplace. And then lastly, how can you kind of keep track of all these KPIs that you'll be creating without any additional reporting? So make your life easier by creating some enhanced dashboards and reporting. This will also help those review cycles that you created and giving feedback to your executive sponsor. So you don't have to wait for that quarterly review per se. You can check in on the dashboard on a regular basis and even make some ad hoc decisions if you see an anomaly or a change in behavior that may need to be addressed more proactively as well. And then with our health plans too, we see results here. We've had a very specific case study with a health plan. They came to us and they had a use case where they saw a lot of provider abrasion around a specific problem set. And so they wanted to enable edits as a way to solve this. So by doing so, we worked very closely with them. And by implementing edits for specific provider population, we helped them see a reduction in fees. That's approximately $500,000 in savings as of the time of this case study. And then immediately within, because you can see it's a very quick turnaround time, immediately started seeing about $6,000 per day just from reducing the claims rework associated with this particular use case. And then lastly, this is great to hear, and we love hearing this, but we got outreach from the providers themselves along with the health plan of saying, this is great. We're so glad that you implemented a way to give us feedback early and often. So as a result, we saw an increase in provider satisfaction. So we love hearing that from our customers and as well as their end users as well.
All right. Key performance indicators that we can look at as we're implementing these programs. I want to go through a few of these. Christina touched on a couple of them, but we'll dive a little bit deeper. First of all, if you're measuring the effectiveness of your payment accuracy program, you're leveraging those dashboards and analytics that Christina mentioned. These are some of the areas that we would recommend that you start with, and you can look at these today even before implementing that program. First of all, denial rates. This is going to be really those things that are preventable mistakes. And if there's an unclear reason for the denial, those are sometimes a really good place to start. But you should see, as shown in our case study, the denial rates go down as you implement those upfront or prepay edits. We do see that over time. And then, of course, the clients we've worked with have often found that's worked really well using those existing communication channels that we touched on. So then they look for what is the next thing that I can address. So this will become an iterative cycle as you look at those metrics over time. The second area that we suggest looking at are provider phone calls. So as a health plan, why are providers reaching out to you? What are your highest call volumes? And what are the call reasons? Why are they contacting you? Is it to find out the status of a claim? Is it to find out why it was denied, or I don't understand my rejection that was issued? That sort of thing. Additionally, for providers, why are you having to call or contact the health plan? And those same reasons often apply. It might be duplicate claims. It may be some other thing that you have a question on, eligibility, and those are all areas that we can potentially influence within a payment accuracy program. We also like to look at rework or manual processes. As you saw in our case study numbers, we were able to help save in administrative rework just by having some of those more clear messages up front. These could be for a health plan pended claims or manual work queues. These could be the work queues for a provider organization, anything that's requiring an additional touch by a human, where if a message was sent up front in a clear and actionable way, someone could take action and touch the claim fewer times. So getting back on that highway example that we walked through, making it back to the expressway. The next area is pay and chase. So along our highway trip, this would be like we're driving down the road, throwing money out the window, and then going back and trying to pick it up off the side of the road. So we like to try and help our health plans save money and prevent having to pay and chase by having those cleaner claims and those clear messages up front. We know that pay and chase sometimes involves regulatory reviews where you have to go back and look at something retrospectively. And this can also be post-payment audits, which audits are expensive and often painful for everyone involved. So an ounce of prevention can be worth a pound of cure in this particular case. And then lastly, one of the KPIs or key performance indicators we like to look at has to do with limited visibility. This could be, how are your adjudication systems behaving as a health plan? What are your vendors that you're having to leverage? Whether you're a provider group or a health plan, we know that often, as mentioned before, there's multiple vendors involved, and sometimes those vendors are really banking on other vendor content not being correct. So you're paying multiple times for the same type of functionality. And we think that that can be streamlined. Just a few brief statistics. We know that duplicate claims are still one of the top 5 provider pain points in the industry today. Those are, again, some things we consider very solvable through payment accuracy. Provider call centers, these can cost approximately $680 million for health plans. That's across all health plans. So very expensive for manning something that you could potentially mitigate with better payment accuracy. As far as rework and manual processes, we also found within our Availity network in 2024, there were 14 million appeals that were submitted, and only 18% of those were overturned. So again, we like to do it right the first time. And for pay and chase, we do have also within our network $4.6 billion in overpayments were requested or initiated. And that's the pain point that Christina touched on, where you're having to go back and ask for that money back from a provider, or provider you're being asked to give that money back when it could have been paid accurately in the first place. And then lastly, just on average, we see about 2 to 7 vendors per payer. I know on the provider side, that's also extensive into how many vendors we may be using. So there may be an opportunity for improving those efficiencies. All right, just a few key takeaways as we wrap up. What we like to, if you walk away with nothing else, is take away, we want this to be about building a culture of change. Within that payment accuracy, it is about transformation. So we're moving from a reactive world to a proactive one. So that prevention versus cure, as I mentioned. Secondly, we also want to make sure that you understand the processes should be sustainable that you create. It is critical to include the key stakeholders, as we mentioned, and this can be, I have often seen very successfully as a committee type approach, where you have different resources from those areas that are going to be influential, but also are going to be impacted by these process changes and updates. In provider organizations, this can potentially be your coding, billing, operations, compliance staff, IT, health plans, operations, provider network and relations, policy resources, IT compliance, et cetera. And so we're going to continue to monitor the success as we move along. So as Christina so nicely put, enabling with technology and the benefits that are there, we want to ensure that you take that away as well. So the technology is going to help make it happen. And then, of course, establishing and monitoring those key performance indicators. This is how you measure, is what we're doing working? Are there other areas we need to address? Where are our biggest pain points? And as I mentioned, it being an iterative process, it's kind of a rinse and repeat approach. But most of all, what we like to see happen, and has happened with several of our customers, is as they've rolled this out, they have found now that's naturally a part of the process. If someone presents a business problem, hey, would this benefit from an upfront edit? And then it becomes inherent in the normal process and way of thinking. So that continuous monitoring is going to help show that. And as you start digging into any of those pain points, please remember we are here to help. We're happy to discuss with you further and connect with you if you have further questions.